we really did some reflection and realized it would really be beneficial to have in writing what our expectations are for all of our partners, for our synagogues, for our schools, and what you could expect from us as well. So, I'm going to go over the key points of that memorandum of understanding today. And then I'd love for us to share together what your visions are for the program this year, and any best practices that we can exchange across schools. So I'm going to share my screen. Let's see if this can work. And here we are. Can everybody see that agenda that I have? Yep, great. So the bulk of what is expected of the school is really to focus on the selection of the people involved. So identifying a school liaison, and really this is somebody who has the time to do the pieces of the position that are really necessary. And I think that's like often the biggest challenge, is finding the time that this person can dedicate. And the key components of the position really are, information sharing, so that everybody at the school who needs to know about the program, that's teachers, literacy coaches, parents, all have the information about the program. And then teacher selection is key, as I'm sure many of you know firsthand, that when you select the teachers who really want volunteers or have the capacity to, in a healthy way, delegate things, the program really thrives. And I think the key for teacher selection is to also know, where these people are in their trajectory of teaching as well. But that doesn't necessarily mean that new teachers aren't good at engaging volunteers. So it's a bit of a dance of, combination of personality, experience, and, mindset. And then the student selection, what we really, really value is when schools select students that are in what we call the middle tier. So not necessarily those who are very high achieving, but also not those who are struggling academically, that they would need like an IEP or really need professional help. And this is because it enables both the student and the tutor to see progress during the year. And especially for kids working hard, and for tutors who are not necessarily compensated or anything, to see that progression, to see that they're making an impact, is very rewarding, and is in some ways a retention tool to retain the tutors. So that student selection is key. But I will say there are times, if it's the right student who has an IEP and has additional help but needs a little more, it's not 100% foolproof. We trust the school's selection process. And then on the other end of the spectrum, there are times when some students really need enrichment, who are excelling academically, but they don't have the teacher, or sometimes doesn't necessarily have the time to challenge them in the way that they would need. So that is another option, where oftentimes a teacher, if they do it, they'll select students, let's say for a small book club or something, and be with a tutor, so that the teacher can actually spend more time with the students who are of higher need. So that middle tier is really, in general, what we're going for, but we understand that there are exceptions that that can definitely, models that can succeed, that are slightly different, if framed appropriately and supported well. And then in terms of the last piece for the school liaison, school orientation and a background check. So we've found that when school liaisons hold an orientation at the start of the year, that doesn't mean right at September, but whenever you're ready for the volunteers to get organized at the school, that can go a very long way. And definitely for new volunteers to, if in a year when there is in-person tutoring, to have a tour of the school. But, you know, I encourage you to have your liaisons consider using Zoom when necessary in terms of orienting volunteers, particularly veteran volunteers. And then to administer a background check. And this is something that over the last few years, our schools have been really great about, making sure that all of the background checks that are necessary for volunteers are administered by your school for all of the volunteers. Before I go to the next section, I'm happy to stop for any questions. Okay, I'll keep going. And then communication and prioritization of the program. This is where it's really important to keep open lines of communication between our organization and the school and the synagogue, or the synagogue representatives, I should say, which leads me into teacher responsibilities. And this is something we are really thrilled that we put in a section about it, because I think this is the key to success. And in terms of goal setting, you know, the important piece is for the teachers to give direction to the tutors. So that means, you know, have a short meeting at the beginning of the year to just check in and say, what are your goals for this student for this year? What would you like them to be able to do? And how can I be helpful? Is really, those are the questions that we want the teacher to answer for the tutor. And then ongoing regular communication to see how that is developing, and if the teacher is seeing successes, to share those with the tutor. If the teacher is seeing challenges or roadblocks, that's fed back to the tutor as well. Now, it doesn't mean that the tutor has to, you know, cover every single one of the bases within the literacy spectrum, but for the tutors to have targeted, clear goals with clear feedback about those goals. And I think, you know, that is something that's nuanced. Is it's very important for tutors to get feedback so that they can progress, and teachers should feel comfortable doing so. But again, then that relationship needs to be developed and expanded upon so that there's a level of trust. And this is often why we see volunteers wanting to return to the same teacher every year, because they develop a relationship and they're able to succeed because that basic communication is the foundation. That doesn't mean that always has to be the case. What we really want to know is what your school's needs are and what works best for your school. So there could be times when tutors switch teachers or tutors follow the student from the previous year. But no matter what, we want the teachers to really set goals and have regular communication. And then scheduling the sessions, and if there's any field trip days or different things like that, that the teacher keeps the tutor in the loop. And then evaluation. This is a piece that we also haven't done in a number of years, but really getting back to is this year we implemented a teacher survey to get a sense of the impact of the program. And we really want to ramp up and have a higher percentage of teachers hopefully up to 100% of teachers participating, completing our survey. And then we're happy to share, the data back with you. We have an awesome data analyst who's a wonderful volunteer. She's a recent Simmons graduate, and she now works at Yale in the psychology department doing surveys and evaluations. So that is teacher responsibilities. Do I have any questions here? Thoughts? Okay. And then what you can expect from us, designating a point of contact, that's me. And, I oversee the partnerships. We have usually about 25 partnerships a year, mostly partnerships between schools and synagogues. However, we do also have corporate programs. We have a corporate program in South Boston and a corporate program in Waltham. And we're actually aiming to expand that component of our program. So if anyone knows of any, friends, colleagues, or spouses, whatnot, people who work in the corporate sector at a small or large company that might be interested in sending volunteers to schools, we can work with them and support them in that process. And so overseeing these partnerships and making sure that they that the lines of communication are open and that the dedication is there on both sides. And then training for tutors. So as Lenore and Judy introduced themselves earlier, we have some experts from the field, which is fabulous. And we've developed some really great trainings. And this year we're really trying to focus in on the aspect of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how we can empower our tutors to feel that they are responding to the needs of the students that they're serving. And in particular, a big piece of that is finding culturally diverse books. So in literacy, for students to really see themselves represented in the books that we share with our students. And marketing, we will share stories and publicize the program. And as I mentioned, we're doing surveys and we'll share the reports. We would like to get back to some school visits when we can, when things are more open. And book donations, as we've done in the past, or it might look different every year, but we do often get book donations. So we would love to share those with our schools. And this past year, something that we developed because of the pandemic, but I think we're going to retain, is a monthly check-in meeting with our tutors. And that's over Zoom. And I think we're actually going to keep it over Zoom because we get really good attendance, I think better than if we had in person only, because our volunteers are come from all over both the South area and Metro West and Brookline and Newton and so forth. So we offer those regular check-ins, and we will also check in with you as principals more frequently and answer any questions or brainstorm solutions to any challenges. Yeah, and so that's really the crux of the Memorandum of Understanding. And it's the intention of the memorandum is really just so that everybody's clear on what's expected and what they can expect from us as well. So it's really just formalizing something that I think most of you are familiar with already. Are there any questions, thoughts? Yeah, Lenore.
I just wanted to point out having seen it from both sides, I was the literacy consultant and I worked setting up the volunteers, and then I volunteered after I retired, and just how important the liaison is, finding the right people, and how important it is for the tutors to have that feed, so somebody knows that they're there, you know, that they feel seen and they're given direction, I think is extremely important. I just want to emphasize that again.
Thank you. Absolutely, absolutely. Judy, did you want to add something more?
As a former teacher at Stapleton School, I had volunteers, and it really made a difference. And now, since I retired, I volunteer at Stapleton and Woodrow Wilson. And these children, I mean, the principals know this, but I was able to work in the school a couple of days a week, covering for meetings, and seeing what went on, what the teachers, the principals, the vice principals had to deal with was just incredible. You have kids at home, you have kids, you know, in class. There were so many needs, and we need our volunteers to help out. So
Yeah,